I'm Marc Rotterman, sitting in for Kelly McCullen. Coming up on Common Ground, the political guru behind Britain's Vote Leave campaign, Matthew Elliott. Join us on Common Ground next. Welcome to Common Ground, Matthew.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. When did you first sense that the British people would support a break from the EU?
I think the key point came in February 2016 when David Cameron came back with his deal from Brussels, and people could see that no powers had transferred back to the UK. The EU wasn't becoming more business friendly. It was a status quo.
David Cameron, the Prime Minister.
David Cameron, the Prime Minister. So he had failed in his promise to basically, make the EU reform. And at that point, then people thought, okay, if it's not going to reform, if it won't become more flexible, we should leave.
Were they upset about limiting migration? Was that one of his promises when he went to Brussels?
Migration was a key part of it, but I actually think that the wider message of take back control, the fact that 60% of UK law is now made in the EU, that was going too far for people. People felt that politicians had given away too much power to an unelected, unaccountable body.
So rules were being made in Brussels for the English people. I wanted our listeners to understand that.
Yeah, so 60% of UK legislation was actually originating from the European Union, from politicians in Brussels who are unelected and unaccountable to voters across Europe.
Policy decisions right down the line.
Policy decisions right down the line. So people were voting to take back control.
So when you started polling, what issue sets were you looking at to drive the message to leave the European Union?
So
how did you frame it?
There are a number of ones. So one was take back control, as I mentioned.
Right.
Another key one was basically showing that business was divided. We had to put forward the business leaders who we knew were on our side, because too often it was the pro-European, European Union business leaders who got the airtime. We had to show those regular entrepreneurs who employ more people than the big business leaders that they were on our side in the referendum. The other key point was our money on our priorities. The fact that we send £350 million every week to the European Union, that money would be better spent on the UK electorate's priorities.
How big a bureaucracy is the European Union based out of Brussels? How many folks do they have on staff?
Well, in terms of people, it's actually quite small in a way.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of people, it's actually no bigger than a local council in the UK. But actually, in terms of their powers to impose laws on other countries, in terms of their reach into the bureaucracies of other countries and their ability to tell them what to do, it's immense.
Let me just ask you, what role did you think sovereignty did play in this whole referendum to leave?
Sovereignty was the driving factor. Sovereignty and independence were the key points. But really, when you talk about sovereignty, and if you said to voters on the doorstep, vote leave to restore sovereignty, they would think, well, we've got a sovereign, we've got a monarch already, the Queen's still around, what are you talking about? So we transposed that word sovereignty into the message of taking back control. But it meant the same thing, it was all about independence.
Now, legal immigration, some people in UKIP, which is the United Kingdom Independent Party, point to illegal immigration as a driving force. I take it you don't agree with that.
It was one of the factors. Now, Tony Blair, when the European Union expanded to include the East European member states, he said that at most about 13,000 people would migrate from East European countries to the UK. It ended up being 2.5 million people during the course of the Labour government. And at that point, people realised that politicians weren't in control, that our borders were porous, and they wanted a system whereby it was more democratic, more accountable. A system whereby politicians decided who the UK economy needed to migrate to the UK to work, not one which was porous and an open border.
So you're in the process of leaving now, but there's a timeline, right? Article 50 was invoked. Can you explain to our listeners and viewers what Article 50 was?
Sure. So in the EU treaties, the only means of leaving the EU is by invoking Article 50, like you say.
Right.
And it took Theresa May about 6 months to be able to invoke that. for a number of reasons. First of all, she had to set up some new departments, like the Department for Exiting the European Union, headed up by David Davis, and the Department for International Trade, headed up by Liam Fox. But also the courts, the UK courts, said that she couldn't unilaterally invoke Article 50. She had to get permission of Parliament to do so. So she had to get that legislation through Parliament. Now, it was easy getting it through the elected House of Commons. The unelected House of Lords, it was more difficult because in that chamber, all the former European Union commissioners are in there and pro-European former MPs. So it was more difficult there, but she got it through and she invoked it about 2 months ago.
She wanted to be deliberate to keep the economy on solid ground, right?
She did, so she basically wanted people to see...
Not to upset the markets.
She wanted people to see that she was doing things in a very deliberate and very methodical way. I think it would have been foolish for her to have invoked it straight away, straight after she became Prime Minister. But at that point, we hadn't worked out our Brexit strategy, we hadn't set up the right departments, we didn't have the right civil servants and negotiators in place, so she was waiting to get all of her ducks in a row, and now she's got that, she can proceed in a sensible way.
Well, of course, there was a big concern of how that would affect the economy of Britain. How is Britain's economy doing now since you have exited?
It's going great guns. In the final quarter of 2016, we had the highest growth rate of any member of the G7. It's still pretty high. We've got record levels of employment in the UK, record levels of foreign investment. So this whole idea of Project Fear, this whole idea that basically the economy was going to collapse, that the city, all the banks were going to move to Frankfurt and Paris, that unemployment was going to skyrocket. None of that happened.
So did you view that when the other side saying that as frankly as a scare tactic?
It was a scare tactic, but it was one that didn't work. If you remember when President Obama visited the UK during the course of the campaign, he said that the UK would be sent to the back of the queue for trade deals.
That was very unusual for a president of the United States to take a position in a British election like that, in my view.
Massively unusual, and people resented the fact that he'd gone so over the top because we did focus groups on this afterwards. People felt that the UK has stood by America and in so many different international wars in recent years. We see ourselves as being having a special relationship with the US. So how dare he say he would be sent to the back of the queue?
Well, it's really not the job of the United States president, in my view, to meddle in another election.
I think it's a key point. Yes, politicians, heads of government shouldn't be telling other electorates what to do.
What are the next steps for Brexit? Now, we have an election coming up, correct?
We do. So we've got the UK election on the 8th of June. Of course, just this week we've had President Macron elected in France. And of course, Angela Merkel is up for re-election in September in Germany. And actually, I don't think the real negotiations will really get going until either she is re-elected or Germany goes for a different chancellor, perhaps Martin Schulz as the next
What
chancellor.
is the reason for this? Prime Minister May called for this election. She did not need to call for this election, correct?
She called for this election, but she wanted to have a strong personal mandate. Now,
nobody thinks she's going to lose, though, right?
She won't lose. She will drive up her majority, perhaps even into 3 figures.
This is for a mandate for Brexit.
It's a mandate for Brexit, but it's a mandate for other things as well. So, for example, at the moment, she hasn't stood on a personal manifesto, and that means the House of Lords can stop anything they want to stop. Once she's won an election on her own manifesto, they can only delay things, they can't veto things.
You've talked about a globalist vision for Britain, and to a great degree now we're seeing Prime Minister May adopt that vision. How would you describe it?
I describe it as being open Brexit. So there was a danger we'd go down the road of a closed Brexit, turn inward, pulling up the drawbridge, becoming more protectionist, stopping migration completely and stalling the economy. Instead, we were campaigning for an open Brexit, Britain becoming more international, Britain having the right trade deals right across the world, Britain taking part on the international scene, Britain having the right migration policy. We want to have highly skilled workers coming to the UK to help our economy.
What is that migration policy? What is Prime Minister May's migration policy at this point?
She hasn't spelt it out. So I think next week we're going to see the publication of the Conservative Party manifesto for the UK election. And in that one we'll see more idea of where she's going to go through migration.
More meat on the bone as far as policy?
More meat on the bone. And I think it will be a controlled migration policy rather than a no migration policy.
Is UKIP on the decline electorally in Britain now?
Oh, massively. So UKIP
So
were
they
as high. They peaked. In European elections, they got up to 30%. In national elections, they were getting about sort of up to 15%, sometimes usually less than that.
They just
now
lost
they're
a lot
down
of
as
local
5%.
elections, right?
They have. They're down to one councillor nationwide. And this is a party who had the raison d'etre as being to campaign to leave the European Union. And now they're a party in search for a mission. And frankly, they haven't identified what that mission is.
They were more of an inward party, weren't they? More of a protectionist party?
They were for the
More
closed
closed England?
Brexit. Now, they wouldn't have won the referendum on their own because they were for that closed Brexit.
Do you see any similarities between the Brexit election and President Trump's election? I know you've talked about that some.
I do see some similarities, yes, in the sense that I think we're going through a political change at the moment. So you'll remember that in the 1990s, we had the emergence of Bill Clinton and Tony Blair and Gerhard Schroeder.
I was just
like
a
that.
young man then.
You were, 21. Now, at that time, these were the third way politicians. They were the centrist politicians. And actually, all the politicians since then have been quite similar in mould to that sort of vintage. Now we're seeing a move away from that in both the UK, the US and other countries, a move towards the anti-establishment parties. So, for example, even though Donald Trump was elected as a Republican, I think it's fair to say that in some ways he was running his own party, just like President Macron in France set up a new political party to run.
I think he's more anti-establishment, more populist, but he is governing right now, I think, as almost an establishment figure.
I think he's moving back to the establishment, yes, for
to
sure.
get things done.
Yes.
I think you're almost forced to when you govern. It's one way you have to run a campaign to get elected. And I'm not saying he's giving up on his principles, but I think he's been forced to. A reality is you just can't get in, turn over the tables and get things done.
I think, as he himself has said in his 100 Days interviews, this is a tougher job than it looks, and he's actually listening more, I'd say, to the advisors rather than just trusting his own judgment of what he watched on TV.
Senior people. How key was the first meeting between Prime Minister May and President Trump?
Oh, it's vital. And if you note that when he was elected, the European Union had a special summit to work out how to deal with this crisis in America electing its own president. Theresa May and Boris Johnson didn't turn up to that meeting.
Tell our viewers who Boris Johnson is now.
Boris Johnson is he was the spokesperson for the Vote Leave campaign. He was the mayor of London, and now he's Britain's foreign secretary. So
has a
really
Beatle
important
haircut,
guy.
right?
He's got a haircut now. He's flattened down the hair. Looks a bit smarter than he did before, but he's a great guy, a really, really good guy. And both he and Theresa May, after Donald Trump's election, were the first people out there to send the congratulations. And as a reward and recognition for that, Theresa May was the first head of government to visit Donald Trump in the White House.
How did the British citizens view President Trump at this point, do you think?
Well, during the election, they did some polling on this, and I think 95% of Brits would have voted for Hillary Clinton. So that gives you an idea of where the British electorate
Because I remember
was.
when I was over there with you, I mean, everybody that I talked to in 2014 thought Hillary Clinton was a lock.
They did, just like
And actually were pulling for her, a lot of them.
I mean, just like the general commentary out worldwide, they're in the bubble thinking, she can't lose this thing. It's in the bag. How on earth could people elect Donald Trump, who's so different to all the politicians that we know? But of course, they hadn't actually gone out there to listen to the electorates. And you actually see the same thing in Brexit. The journalists who are the ones who went outside of London went to places in the country like Sunderland and Newcastle, or what the first ones to vote for Brexit
Outside
in
of
the
the cosmopolitan areas.
When they listened to those people
Right.
outside of the big cities,
Right.
they realised that something was afoot, and those were the commentators who were on the money predicting Brexit.
I like to call him the blue-collar billionaire. But so you think that the British electorate have mellowed on the president now and are coming to like him a little bit more?
I think they have to some extent. I don't think he'd win a popularity contest at the moment in the UK, but I think they're giving him a second look.
Is there a populist movement sweeping Europe, or was it stalled with the election of Macron earlier this week?
Okay. If you see populism as being hard right parties, now hard right parties aren't winning in the EU, and frankly, I think that's a good thing they're not. If you see populism as being politicians realising they've got to run on a platform that is anti-establishment, they've got to listen to people a bit more, they've got to take on board their concerns about jobs and cost standard
Listen
living.
to the middle class, the blue collar.
That populism is still on the rise.
So that's why you think Le Pen, who just lost earlier this week, lost because she was just too far hard right.
I think that she was held back as well by the legacy of her party. Of course, her father, when he set up the National Front, he was far right. She has moved towards the centre a little bit, but is still steeped in that history and frankly is still seen as being far right.
Does that party survive in France?
I think it will do. I think that, well, first of all, we've got the National Assembly elections in France in a month's time. So France is a semi-presidential democracy. So it elects a National Assembly a month after the presidential election, and from the National Assembly, they select a prime minister who has big control over domestic policy.
Now, 14 million people I saw, none of the above in that election. They didn't want Le Pen or Macron. Is that correct?
That is correct. And when I was over in Paris,
what does that speak to?
When I was over in Paris a few weeks ago, they were saying that basically they think that President Le Pen could win in 2022, in 5 years' time. So they saw this election as being a staging post, and they felt that if Macron's elected, they felt he was going to be a bit of a lame duck president, not be able to do many things, be a continuity of Hollande, and at that point, Le Pen will build on her support in this election and win.
Macron, excuse me, do you see Macron as a fiscal conservative? He is talking about cutting spending.
Macron is still, I think it's fair to say, slightly confused and bland in where he stands politically.
He's an investment banker by trade, right?
I hope he actually draws on his business experience and gets the French economy in shape. I've got a feeling that he might be a bit too low energy to do that.
Well, do you think French socialism in its current way it's structured survives?
It doesn't, and this is a big thing. We've seen the social democratic parties, not only in the UK with the Labour Party, or in France with their Socialist Party, or in Holland in their March elections with their Labour Party, but frankly with the Democrats in America. These centre-left parties are facing a huge challenge at the moment, and I think they'll have to reinvent themselves in order to be relevant
Is
again.
that because they just don't have the personalities to drive the electorate, or is it because of where they're standing, how far left they've become?
I think it's because they lost touch with their voters. So I think it was traditionally, certainly in the UK context, a coalition of the traditional working class support, but built on top of that some sort of metropolitan progressive support. Now the trouble with the UK Labour Party is that it became a party of the metropolitan progressives and forgot the concerns of their base.
So there are very many similarities between the Labour Party and the Democratic and the ultra-left in America.
I think there are. I think there's similarities there. And the Democrats, I predict, won't recover until they re-engage with their blue-collar base in the Rust Belt.
How do you think Macron's election impacts the market and the EU overall? Where do you see the EU in 10 years? Does it survive? A lot more countries leave?
Well, short term, having President Macron stabilises the markets because it means that a far-right politician hasn't been elected. But actually what it could mean as well is that it means a lack of EU reform because he is very signed up to the European project. And I predict that if the European Union doesn't reform, doesn't become more in touch with people, doesn't become more flexible, that will mean that other countries will leave down the line. So actually it's a trade-off between short-term stability.
Is Italy on the cusp of leaving?
Well, the Italian elections will be sometime before February of next year, date to be confirmed. But at the moment, the Five Star movement is in the lead in Italy. Now, they are not really a far-right populist movement. They're a very much an anti-establishment populist movement. And they're in the lead in the polls at the moment, and people predict that they will win.
The Tories, you are telling me now, are going toward the middle class and the blue collar, and they're picking up, from what I'm hearing from you, they're picking up what the Labour Party used to get as far as electoral votes.
They very much are, particularly those blue-collar workers who really want to, are proud of their jobs, want to help their families, want low tax rates so they can take more money home, perhaps want to become self-employed and become a small businessman themselves. The ones who, we call them white van man in the UK, the ones who want to be self-employed and have their own businesses. That demographic, those people who are just about managing, the jams as they're called in the UK, those people on the cusp of, making some money, they're the ones who she's supporting.
I want to pivot back. You and I were discussing off camera. I don't think a lot of people in America realize that you cannot run television ads in an election in Britain.
That's very true. So we don't have TV adverts. You're allowed to advertise in newspapers and on billboards in the street. But we actually did a different tactic for our campaign. We put all of our ad spend into social media, into Facebook ads. And I think campaigns over here are going the same way, albeit more slowly.
And digital.
So digital is the way forward, because the trouble with spending money on TV ads and billboard ads and that sort of thing is that you don't know who's actually seen the ad.
You can't quantify it.
You can't quantify it. Whereas, of course, with online advertising through Facebook, digital advertising, you get that feedback mechanism. So you know who's supporting you. You can then ask them for donations or get them to volunteer or make sure they turn up to vote on the day. You have that two-way transfer of information.
You and I were emailing back and forth towards the end of the election. When did you actually feel like you had it, you were close to winning, or you might have had it in the bag?
About a week out, I was confident we were going to win. I thought we'd win about 55%.
Did you see polling to
I saw polling
quantify
say that, but also we just felt we had the momentum on our side and our campaign was buzzing. But then, of course, you had the very sad and tragic death of Joe Cox, the Member of Parliament. And at that point...
Tell us what happened there, please.
Well, so a week out from the referendum, Joe Cox, a Labour Member of Parliament, was murdered by one of her constituents, somebody with a history of mental health problems, but far-right associations. And he shouted Britain first when he killed her. And I thought at that point that would infect the entire campaign, because people would think that the Leave vote was somehow associated with that.
Did it stall things for you then?
Well,
did you see a stall in the numbers in the polling?
Both the campaigns suspended campaigning for that Friday, and then on the Saturday we did ground war campaigning, and we didn't re-emerge until the Sunday. In that period, of course, we were talking with voters. And thankfully, what voters saw was actually there's a difference between this tragic incident versus the vote. The vote was a separate thing that had to be decided on in its own right.
What's next for you, Matthew Elliott? You got another campaign in your pocket?
Well, at the moment, I'm enjoying my work at the Rotterman Institute, where I'm a senior fellow, and I'm writing about UK-US trade deals and populism across the world. So I'm doing a lot of writing and speaking and broadcasting. But I'm sure there's another campaign in me. I don't know when it will happen, but my campaigning days are far from over.
Will you write about the impact of the French election and lessons learned there?
I will do. I'll be waiting for the National Assembly elections to be out the way, so we can actually see the full picture and take from that predictions about what will happen and President Macron.
Well, I'm going to be interested to see how Macron delivers, because I think the way that Theresa May has handled herself has been very deliberate. It's kept stability. It's stopped people from thinking or worrying about whether they're going to have less money in their paycheck or it's going to upset the economy. And I think the way you have handled it and the way she's handled it has been very, I would say, commendable. Let me just ask you, do you have any final thoughts before we conclude?
Well, it's interesting what you say about political communication. So
Yes.
You've seen the very hyperactive political communication of President Trump during the election with his tweeting, even at 3 a.m. in the morning. Theresa May has done things
A lot of us wish he wouldn't do that.
She's done things in a very different way. She's very low-key. But what that means is that when she does come out and speak, the public sit up and listen.
Matthew, thank you for being with us. I appreciate
you.
you being on Common Ground. Look forward to having you back at some point.
Thank you very much.
North Carolina Channel is made possible by the financial contributions of viewers like you who support the UNC TV network.